Hi, thanks for watching the videos. Today I'm going to talk about an out-of-body experience, my first out-of-body experience, when I was a child of 6 years of age. You see, at 6 years of age we lived in Prestwich, and my father was a police officer. And what he said was the law, believe it or not. Well, it was in our house anyway. So, as a general rule, he used to order us to bed. There was myself, my brother, and baby sister. She'd be about 18 months at the time. My brother would be 4.5, and I was 6. And I had a bedroom on my own, a little more of a box room than anything. But every night at 6 p.m. we were sent to our rooms. Wind, rain, sunshine, didn't matter, into the rooms. And it was an old Edwardian property we lived in, and it had locks on the doors. And at 6 o'clock my father would put us into our room and lock the door so there was no coming out. Well, you can imagine if it's June, July, beautiful sunny evening, and you're locked in your room. You really want to be out playing, and of course you can't. So I was just laid on my bed, and I was a bit too young to be reading. I hasn't actually mastered that at that point. So I was laid on the bed, and I couldn't go to sleep at 6 o'clock at night. I was full of young vitality. So I just laid on my bed and I was counting the flowers on the wallpaper, little blue flowers they were, and I was counting these. I don't know what I got up to, but as I was counting these flowers, it was perfectly light in the room, as it would be at 6 o'clock at night in the middle of June or something like that. Anyway, as I was counting these flowers, suddenly the wall, this is what happened. Absolutely, this is what happened to me. As I was counting the flowers, suddenly the wall disappeared, and I was taken through it, and I went flying through the air, and I came to earth in a place where there was massive sand dunes and great stretches of sand, and I saw a man standing on a raised wooden platform, and he wore a white gown, a white smock with a belt around it, and I could see he had sandals on, and he was about, I reckon it looked to me about 45 years of age, and he was in charge of this operation, and around him below the platform were thousands of men, dark-skinned men, wearing like loincloths, and they were dragging stones across the desert. And as I saw this man and what he was doing, suddenly I entered into this man through the back of his neck. I was obviously a spirit. I was in my spirit body, and I was out of my physical body, but I entered this man from the back, and for a while, for a period of time, I actually became that man. I was there, and I could sense what was happening. He was giving direct orders. He must have been an architect, because he had big drawings in front of him on some kind of, it wasn't paper, it was maybe papyrus, I suppose, But he had drawings in front of him, and he was directing all these semi-naked black men who were dragging these stones across the desert. And it was really stressful work that he was doing. Obviously, he was under some kind of instruction to get this absolutely right. He must have done, because I remember feeling quite stressed, and the sun was blazing down, absolutely was blazing hot. I remember this, and I was that man. I became that man. And the next thing I know, bang, I'm back in the bedroom in Prestwich, a little boy of 6 years old. And it was absolutely amazing. It was clear in my mind. To this very day, I can still see that. So the next morning when my father unlocked the room, I told him. I said, listen, Dad, I had I told him I had this incredible experience where I went through the wall and I became a man in an ancient land, standing on a platform directing people to drag stones through the desert. And he said, you will not speak about this again. This is evil. My father was a Roman Catholic, you see, and he believed that what I'd seen was evil or something. He said, you will not speak about that. You must never ever speak of that again. Never mention it again. The problem was, it became a reasonably regular thing for me to lie in my bed, locked in my room, and stare at the wall, counting the little paper drawings of flowers on the walls, and transport myself. I went time after time to this ancient land. Of course, I had no knowledge of what it was, but I now believe that what I was watching was the creation of the pyramids. Now, how that happened, I didn't know. But I do know that when my father restricted me from speaking about it, because you didn't argue with my dad, he was a great big ex-Special Forces paratrooper who had gone on to be a policeman. And so I was restricted from speaking of this, of course. As a 6-year-old boy, it played on my mind, and I started to have what I now believe to be a form of nervous reaction to this. I started collapsing. I fell downstairs. I fell from the top of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs, and subsequently had a form of epileptic fit where I fell on the floor and my head was buzzing and buzzing. This is all. I'd repressed everything, you see. I couldn't tell anybody. And that was my first out-of-body experience. I've had many since then, but that was the first one. And I went back, what I believe now to be ancient Egypt, where I became an architect who was overseeing the construction of the pyramids.